as I'll ever be.
Call to order January 11th, 2022, 5 p.m. Call to order January 11th, 2022, 5 p.m. Meeting of the Budget and Personnel Committee.
Not quite sure.
You think we're good?
Sounds like the volume's on the TV. Have you got
Yep,
the
that might be the whole shebang right there. Somebody been watching television. Shouldn't do that. Okay, now we're good.
Good to go. All right, this time there's no public comment, right? I don't believe.
No, sir.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And then I will turn it over to you, Mike, for the trolley budget memo, fiscal year 23 trolley budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trolley budget is not much different than it was last year. Just to review the way the trolley works here, 50% of our budget, our non-revenue, 50% of our non-revenue funds come from the FTA, from the federal government. Of the remaining 25%, 29% comes from a state, from the DRPT, Department of Rails and Public Transportation, from the state of Virginia, and the remaining 29% the town of Virginia pays. This year, I did increase the average salary for drivers because we think we're going to have to meet that in order to attract some drivers. I only have one left from last year, well, two left from last year, and we probably need about 7. So we're going to bump that pay a little bit, see if we can entice some people to come drive for us. As you know, you just can't be anybody off the street. It has to be somebody with CDL and qualified. So we are looking to attract some drivers with a little bit extra pay. Right now, we do not have a transportation director. Ad was in the paper last Friday. It'll be in the paper again this Friday for a transportation director. I have at least one person I know that's interested and that will apply. So hopefully we'll get some more folks interested. And by the end of January, when that job closes, we'll go ahead and interview and hopefully hire a new transportation director, which is budgeted for this year with no problem. So just to quickly review the trolley's budget, the FTA grant, or federal grant, let me back up. Our total grants are $65,634, and that's the FTA grant and DRPT. Our program income, which we will receive from fares, is $4,000, and the town's local match is $26,800 for a total grant, a total trolley budget of $96,442. It's pretty straightforward, and you can see the breakdown of all the operational expenses there. Salaries total about $49,000 of that money. And we still do have, I think you'll remember from last year, in this year's budget, we still have a new trolley that is in manufacture right now. We're expecting to take delivery of that trolley before the end of this fiscal year and completely pay that out before the end of the fiscal year. And of that, the town's only commitment is about $6,000 of that $165,000 trolley. We will sell the old trolley and take those funds and deposit to our capital account, trolley capital account, which is where we will take our local match from to pay for the new trolley. So it basically is not costing the town anything. So first item of business is to ask the committee to approve the trolley budget. We'll entertain any questions you have before that.
It's pretty straightforward. Denise, you got any questions on that?
I don't think so.
No. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the trolley budget this
So
time.
moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to fiscal year 23 taxes and fees. And I did have a few comments on this guy, but I'll let you go ahead, Mike, with your...
Yes, sir. Okay. Proposed 23 taxes and fees are included here for your review. As you know, last year we increased the solid waste collection fee by 10 cents a week, and the transient occupancy tax went up 1% beginning last January. Those have been the only changes to taxes and fees in the last few years. We think the existing taxes and fees are adequate to support our operations for this year. However, I will propose an addition to all building permits, and let me lay the groundwork for that. As you know, the building and zoning administrator here is a one-man show. He does not have any dedicated clerical help, nor does he have assistants or anything. He issued 548 permits by himself last year for a total of about $15 million in construction. That's a lot. He is the building and zoning administrator, so he does zoning as well. We think we can get him some help by instituting a online permit service. The service that we have reviewed and interviewed is a service called Clyde Permit. What this does is it allows folks that are applying to apply online. Once you apply online, it tracks and organizes your permits. You can schedule inspections online. It should save Mark quite a bit of clerical time and let him dedicate some of that time to seeing people in the office or doing inspections or looking at our trying to improve our CRS rating, which is also under his purview. One of the things it does that we're looking forward to is where you can submit permits online and even pay for them online. It will reduce the amount of traffic through the office because you won't have to come in to get a permit. You won't have to come in and seek questions. You can do that all online. So it should leave him more time during the day to actually do work rather than entertaining customers all day long. And sometimes all afternoon he comes in at the end of the day and says, I didn't get a thing done today. I saw 7 customers this afternoon between 1 and 4 o'clock. And it's and he also has plans review, and there's countless other activities that he has to do by himself. So I think this will really help him out. In order to pay for this, and it's a cloud-based system. Annual service charge is $5,000. I would propose adding $10 to each permit. That would get us over that hump, and we'll completely pay for this system, so it would be no impact to our budget.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would contractors, would it be mandatory that they have to get their permit this
No,
way?
it would not. We could make it optional. Making it mandatory. And the county instituted one of these a few years ago, and they did not make it mandatory for a little while. They even ran classes with some of the contractors, and you see old guys like me in there trying to figure out how to work this thing on the computer. And they've instituted it, and it works okay. I think a lot of people like it because it streamlines the process. One good thing it does is this, and this has been a problem forever. It was a problem when Kenny was here. It was a problem when I was in the contracting business. It does not let you submit an incomplete permit application. If there's something you didn't put in that application, it won't let you submit it. So that's countless hours of Mark's time having to reject a permit and call the person and say, your permit's not done because you didn't submit the drawing, or you didn't submit the setbacks, or you didn't submit this. I think that in itself will save quite a bit of time and effort. And as people get used to it, it'll be more accepted, and I think it'll really do well for us and people applying for permits.
So the county had a class for contractors?
They did.
Is it user friendly?
The county's was, I wouldn't say it was the most user-friendly thing, but it was not difficult at all. And most people got the hang of it, and the folks that really just refused to do it, find somebody to do it for them.
Yeah, that would be, my only suggestion. I would have it be a mandatory. I mean, I can't remember last time I filled out a manual application for myself in my business. I mean, it's pretty commonplace now to go
Yes.
online and use online application systems. And I think sometimes you don't make those things mandatory. You're just kind of making yourself a little bit more work. You know what I mean?
Well, we can always.
And y'all can think on that. That's internal, but.
We can always not make it mandatory at first and say we're going to give it an implementation
Yeah,
date of
that's
2024, and we're going to have it this way.
Yeah, I would not hesitate to go in that direction. The thing I had is that, we talked about this a little bit, where's these fees. And I'm not sure, our fees are they're not market comparable, like when you look at the county. So when I went in there and looked at like new construction, and I'm on that page 4, Denise. That
Oh,
new
yeah, I'm with you.
construction, 18 cent a square foot, county's at 37 cents a square foot.
Mhm.
Remodeling, the county's we're at 13 cents, county's at 28 cents. New construction, 23 cents, county's at 48 cents. And then remodeling on commercial, 18 cents, the county's at 37 cents. I'm not sure why we have the discounted rates on the permit fees. It's not like we're not offering an equivalent service. You know, our system is just as equivalent to what the county's utilizing.
I don't know that we're discounted, or we just haven't kept up.
Because I would almost rather, instead of seeing this like this $10 charge per permit, I'd rather see us get our fees to an equivalent level, which would more than pay for the system, and even actually might even down the road pay for an additional help in that department, enabling us to kind of set that aside as its own department versus, because now I guess the way you look at it, we're subsidizing building and zoning through
Yes,
general fund.
yes.
It's not taking care of itself. And that bothers me a little bit because you're dealing with $15 million in capital projects, and, you know, we're getting 55,000 off of it, which doesn't even pay for the department.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that, make some adjustments. Mark and I sat down the other day, and I think for a new home, we were charging about half of what the county charges in
Yeah,
permit
of course.
fees.
So I don't know if we can, do you have time to maybe look at that now? Oh, we got
Sure.
time. I mean, is that all right with you, Denise?
It's
Do you see where I'm coming
Yeah, I
from?
definitely see where you're coming from.
Because then that would even allow us to do the computerized system, as also maybe even get him some help in there. We talked about that. And then make that department a little bit more self-sufficient to its own. Because, you know, from a contractor perspective, I believe these are mostly a pass-through. These fees are passed through to
Oh, sure,
the
yeah.
customer.
Yeah.
Even homeowners, if you're doing it yourself, if you're gonna put a new roof on, a small house is $10,000. What's an extra few dollars in permits?
right.
You know, you hardly notice it, so.
Yeah, it's, you know, we're, I think that a lot of these permit fees are way low on some things.
And I didn't even go through the minimums. The minimums
Yeah.
are not even comparable as well.
Yeah.
You know, their minimums were twice as much. But I mean, for bookkeeping, I would almost think that would be easier to
Yeah.
adjust our fees instead of this $10 charge. At
Sure.
least look at that before, maybe bring it back to us at the next meeting.
Sure.
For the
Yeah.
council.
I think they all need to be looked over very carefully and see how we do compare with the county.
And this is a good time to do it if we're looking into doing a commercial system, a cloud-based system on.
Absolutely, we can do that. And you will see, right behind this, I did give you some cohort taxes and fees if, just for a basis of comparison. Building fees are not in this chart, nor are water rates. And we've just completed a water rate study. We just got it in the office yesterday, completed. So we're reviewing that right now, and we will bring that to you at a later meeting this spring, so that we can take a hard look at water rates. But I just included that cohort fee chart just for your information.
Yeah, I thought we seemed to look like we were pretty much in line on those for the most part. We were right in the game on those guys.
Well, for meals and transient, we're right there.
Yeah.
Everybody's pretty much in a group on that. We're a little low on real estate. I think we're fourth lowest on personal property. We're right in the group on motor vehicle taxes and business licenses. We're just a little on the top side, but many of the business license schemes that these other municipalities had went way into the weeds. One of them was 2 pages long, depending on the type of business you had. Some of them charged more if you served alcohol, and it. I think there was even one that said that they charged more if it was a massage parlor or something similar. They charged a lot more. So, in any event, that was just for your information, and that's all I have for that. We will review. We'll sit down and review all our building fees and see if we can't tune those up a little bit.
Tune those up and then bring those back to us. So we'll kind of
Sure.
table that for this time, if that's all right. Is that all right if you need to table that at this time instead of making a move on that?
Yeah.
And then, moving on to projected revenues. Mike, I'll turn that over to you to go through
Okay.
that.
And of course, I'm sure you've read the memo there. I will, before we get into this, preface this, of course, a lot of these revenues are similar or very similar to last year's, and they're very simple to predict, especially since, if you'll notice, I have given you in the middle column there, the blue figures are each item's cost to date or collections to date. So you can see that's the first 6 months of the year, and you can make an assumption as to the last 6 months. It gets a little more complicated, and I'll just review them and we'll hit them as we come. Real estate tax levy, we've bumped that just a little bit, and that's still below the actuals from FY21. Tangible personal property, similar. We've bumped that just a little bit, and we're still in line with FY21. Delinquent taxes, that's a guesstimate, and we're very conservative on that. Then we get the meals tax. So let's address meals and transient together, transient occupancy, because they kind of march in the same file here. I have spoken to several, hotels, rental agencies, people that do this every day, to just get a feel for what what they see coming in this summer and this season. And I would say it's not all over the place, but there are a few who are cautiously optimistic this is going to be a good year, and there are a few that are telling me that their bookings are as good, or at least as good as last year, which everybody agrees that last year was a record-setting year. And I have some of the statements here on the screen. The hotels, I have a couple that are cautiously optimistic. They say their bookings aren't there right now, but they expect them to be before the spring. They think people are booking last minute. Then I had a few other tell me that right now their bookings are great. I had one tell me that their bookings were 3 times what they were last year this time for the spring. And I had another one tell me that they have done well all winter. They did well all winter last year. They expect to do well all winter this year and to have a good summer as well. Then I spoke to some rental agencies, and it seems that both of those that I talked to seem to be cautiously optimistic. They still think we'll have a good year, but where there's less stimulus money this year, and they think there's more availability, more available avenues to travel. People might get back on an airplane if they feel safe, that it might be a little less than it was last year. So in the synopsis here, there's almost complete agreement that FY21 season was the best ever, with several properties breaking records for occupancy and revenue. For the 2022 season, overall pre-bookings for house rentals and some hotels are not quite as strong as last year, while some other properties are seeing strong early reservations that exceed those of the last January's numbers. All agree that business should be comfortably exceed that of pre-pandemic levels. However, with less stimulus money and more available travel opportunities, a majority feel that this season could be somewhat less busy than in 2021. But everybody agrees that it'll be better than the pre-pandemic 2019 numbers. So, that being said, prefacing it with that, I have increased meals and transient taxes conservatively. If you look at transient right now, I think everybody knows, because we get a report at every meeting, that we've been breaking records for several months in transient occupancy and meals taxes. Last year, our budget for meals was $1 million. I've increased that by $100,000 to $1.1 million for this year. And if you look down at transient occupancy, last year our budget was $1.4 million, and we've blown through that already. We're 127% of that revenue. I am cautiously optimistic about that, and I am a little bit more reserved on what we might see next year, so I've bumped it 1.4 to 1.6 for next year. That may be a little bit low. I hope it is, but I'm not ready yet to say that this is not a bubble and we won't have a correction.
I have to agree with you. I'm hoping that it's going to be up to that, but when you look around and see the prices of things going up the way they are and the inflation that's going on, and gas prices the way they are, the only thing with gas prices is it might keep people in closer distances, might have them come here, but, inflation's coming out of the roof right now. with
Well,
things.
we've got some inflation. We have the promised rate hike from the Fed. There's lots of things happening here.
Yeah. I think it's good to be conservative, to a certain point here.
I will tell you also that I've sat down and worked some numbers, and that if we generally collect about 28% of our meals tax January through June in the last half of the year, and for transient occupancy we collect about 24% of our transient occupancy tax in January through June. If those percentages hold true, we're looking at a projected $1.3 million meals tax and $2.3 million total transient occupancy tax, and that blows away any record we have. That's absolutely fantastic. That was echoed by the folks in the business that I spoke with. But I'd love to see that another year. I'm just very cautious about predicting that. So those are my predictions for the two excise taxes. Bank franchise tax, again, very straightforward. Sales tax, the state has had a good year in 2021 for sales taxes. You can see we're already up to $105,000 for the first 6 months. So $170,000 is a little bit of an increase, and I think we can make that. Business licenses are pretty straightforward. I think we'll make that number. Motor vehicle licenses, again, that's a pretty straightforward number. Utilities tax, again, pretty easy to predict at $217. Fines, interest on savings. Interest, I way over predicted last year. Interest rate cuts by several 100% really ruined that. So I'm being cautiously optimistic. Rates are supposed to go up, so I bumped that just a little bit. But if you look at a couple columns over in 2000 for FY20, we had $73,000 in interest on our accounts. Year before that was over $80,000. You look this year, so far this year in the first 6 months, we're up to $1,500 total interest. So you can see what's happened to rates there.
Can I go back and ask about fines?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming this is a police department.
Yes, ma'am.
That's taking a hit, hasn't it?
Yes. Well, if you look this year so far, we're right on track to. We're not quite on track to make our budget, but we are going to exceed the last fiscal year, which was 21.
Thank you.
Boat ramp user fees, that's pretty straightforward. Building permits, again, I've bumped them a little bit because I project that we're going to increase rates or fees or something there. The rest of these are pretty straightforward. The trolley rental income, we rent 2 offices to the trolley system, and we charge them for that. That's where that $15,000 comes from. A new line this year is rental of the old firehouse, and that $23,000 only includes the spaces we've rented thus far that we have a year lease on. And backing up one, the Matthews property over there on the mainland, the $4,625. That includes both. The agricultural lease we have on it, and also the hunting lease that we have on it for the year. And both of those should renew. In fact, I'll re-advertise a hunting lease in April this year. The next item is communication tax, straightforward. Personal Property Relief Act, that's always the same. Card distribution tax, that again the same. The cost recovery from water, we assign that number, so that'll be exactly that. Solid waste collection fee, and that is with the 10-cent increase that we had in 2021. That's just over by a few $1,000s what it will actually cost us, and but the contract will cost us. So we did not increase that fee too much, believe me. Law enforcement funds, again, those are grants. Police donations, of course, that's Robbie's charities that they do, and they do a great job of. Dispatch revenue, that's coming from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, where we dispatch their officers as well, and that goes up, I think, 1.5% each year. Vdot maintenance funds, that's the urban maintenance grant we get to pave our roads with. That is that reflects, we're anticipating Vdot including the Ocean Breeze roads in that this year, so this number reflects the Ocean Breeze roads coming in, and it also reflects the increase that we get, the annual increase that we get in that number. So it went from 716 this year. It'll be hopefully 755 in 2023. Transfer from the ramp repair fund, that'll be to fund the new boat ramp at Memorial Park, and that number may come in or go out of that depending on what the Harbor Committee does. That number may or may not come out of that fund in this year. Moving on down to the harbor. Harbor rent's $110,000. We bumped that a little bit because we'll have a few more slips after we install the new docks, so that number should increase. Subleases, Vernon has done an outstanding job of subleases. We're on track this year for $54,000. We're hoping that we make that. He made 68 the year before. So I've conservatively put it at $45,000. I think we can certainly make that. The DPA, that is a grant that we will put in for the last finger pier to be replaced down at the harbor. That's estimates coming right from Ravens Marine. That is 75% of that total job, and you can see just a few lines down. The other $50,000 will be transferred from the general fund. That's our local match for that grant. And fuel revenue, $375,000. Right now, to date, Vernon is at $303,000, almost $304,000 for fuel thus far. So I feel certain that next year, if things continue, that he can achieve $375,000 there in gross sales. Moving on down to the trolley, we've just discussed that. Those numbers are indicative of or reflect exactly what we just looked at for the trolley's budget. And on down to water, I've increased water rents to $1.1 million. I know last year we were at $945 actual numbers. If you look at, and these are pretty predictive, if you look at the blue numbers, that's to date number, we're on track to make about $120,000. I'm sorry, $1.2 million this year. So I feel certain we can do 1.1 next year. The rest of the numbers are just estimates for service connections and extensions. Availability fees are based on experience. And transfer from the water reserve, that $105,000 was coming out of reserves. That is the money we'd like to put into capital projects coming this year. They include new pumps, some VFDs for those pumps, and things such as that. So that concludes my estimates for revenue this year. And any questions you have on revenue, I'll be glad to take a look at. Any adjustments you want made, we'll take a look at them.
Yeah, my only concern would be I think your estimation is too low on the transient occupancy and the meals.
On both?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because one thing I don't know that you're accounting for is that the increase in a lot of these is due to the increase in the prices that we already saw this past summer. You know, the lodging units have been gathering more income per unit, and we're also putting online more units. That's another big factor too. You're putting more units online for the transient occupancy. So I think that's another factor that's going to lead you to an increase, irregardless of the travel level.
Right.
You're going to have an increase due to increase in prices as well as increase in available units.
One thing that did come out in my discussions with these folks was that it was a record year for occupancy and income.
Yeah.
Everyone said that they had the best year in income.
Right. So if they're having their best year in income, that means they've raised their prices. So we're going to see. I'm not saying you've got to go hog wild on it, but I think with that TOT at 1.6, it's low to me, personally. I mean, we had 1.6 actual in fiscal year 21. Right? Yeah. 1.6 in fiscal year 21, I dare say you're not going to beat that. You can give us some time to think on it and maybe adjust the number, but I think we need to be a little bit more
Well, what we can do.
truth-telling on that, or you can wait and see what the expenses come in, and we can
Oh.
use that as our adjustment factor.
I was going to say, that's basically what we did last year. We waited to see what our expenses were in order to balance. We upped our revenue on this,
And we can tackle
Would-
that at a later date.
which is why I like to do revenues before we do expenses, because once we set revenues, then we know what money we have to work with in expenses, and we're trying to keep our expenses within what we think we'll take in,
Right.
instead of doing it the opposite direction. Just makes more sense to me, but that is what I was going to suggest, is that we use that if we need to balance revenues with expenses, that we use those two funds to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, so keep it where it is now, and then look at our expenses. And then also, if we have another project or something that needs funding, we can possibly use it, with that project being one that we would have to cut if we didn't quite make revenue on
Sure.
the TOT or the meals tax.
Yeah.
I'm agreeable with that. We can go that route as well. So,
Good thing, there's plenty of things we can do to make it work, which is, we've got plenty of room, so that's the thing that gives you, makes you feel better about it.
yeah. All right, Denise, you have anything
No,
else?
I hope he is, a little conservative, but I'm just a little leery this year. I don't know why. Don't mean to sound like Debbie Downer, but.
Yeah, but with the gas
I guess
prices,
we'll see.
historically high gas prices are good for us. And also, with this coronavirus continuing to be around, people are hesitant to make long-term plans,
Yeah.
as we were talking about the other night. And they're hesitant to make long-term plans, because now's when they need to be making their long-term plans.
Well,
And right now, everybody's in a holding pattern, and usually when they end up in a holding pattern in January and February, that means they're staying close to home in the summertime, so, historically, so.
I think what we hopefully will end up seeing is that this wave gets through here, but they're still being a little conservative about being closer to home, and then, along about March, April, they're saying, you know what, let's go down to Second for a week or so.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
They're not making any decisions right now.
And if I could, the two charts at the end of this, I put them in there for your information, but the red number down at the bottom, and that gives you meals and transient for the last several years, actual numbers. The red numbers at the bottom are predictions for the remainder of this year, for the end of this year or so, for each of those. If you remember, I did this last year, and it blew right past, I think somewhere around 1st of March, it blew right past my prediction. So.
All right, moving on, committee member comments. Denise?
I'm sorry I was late and not paying attention. Other than that, I guess we're getting heavy into budget season, and I just hope things continue to go well for the town. That's all I've got right now.
Yeah, I really don't have anything. I had a question, Mike, on our 22 budget. How are we, now we're working on 23, how are we going to be looking at 22? Because we're going to be over on 22.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just going to keep addressing that each month, do you think, or is we going to have, because that's going to come to an end at the end of June 30th?
Well, and you mentioned before that this committee ought to take a look at that.
Yeah.
But yes, we can take a look at that in conjunction with our CIP and see what we need to do and what to get started with. But any surplus that we have, I can't have a word for it, and any unallocated surplus that we have at the end of the year, I would put right in reserves so that they'd be there for us next year. But that would be my way of reconciling that unallocated surplus at the end of the year.
Right.
But certainly anything that we can go ahead and do would be beneficial, because it'd be cheaper now usually probably than down the road.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at. We don't want to get in a last-minute rush on this. We're never going to have a surplus. I know we've already, we used some on the road down at Ocean Breeze.
Right.
And then
We
we were
had
talking about the
nothing but
harbor
compliments
committee.
on that.
What's that?
Had nothing but compliments on that.
Yeah, we were talking about the harbor just the other night, this project at Memorial Park. It'd be nice to bite off some of these projects in this fiscal year with the surplus. But we want to also, I think you're right, allocate some of that into the savings as well, since we have had such a banner year.
Yeah, we've hit with the park that we just built and a few other little projects, we've hit our reserves for this and that. I mean, some donations that we did last year and that sort of thing. It'd be nice to get those back up.
Get those
and-
back in there
Yeah.
this year. Okay, so you'll just keep that in the back of your mind as far as meeting on that?
Yes,
Because I
sir.
know most of our meetings are taken up with the budget, right, going forward for the
Yes, but
next
as you,
two.
yeah, you can see, we've been 45 minutes and we've tackled revenue, so we
Right.
certainly can put something like that on a regular meeting and discuss it.
On, when we get further along in the
Yes.
budget? Okay. All right, nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.